The third generation, the Sansei, came of age, were able to go to college because our parents worked so hard to get us through school. We were able to take the lessons from the Civil Rights Movement, from the Asian Studies programs, from Dr. Martin Luther King, all of the leaders of the Civil Rights period, and we launched our own movement. And so NCRR is one of those groups that launched the movement, and I'm really, really proud of what we were able to do. But before I go on, I want to say that UCLA Asian American Studies program published our book last year, and we've been doing book talks up and down the state, and so it's really wonderful to be here in San Diego. The story was not written by one or two or three people. It's really an anthology with the stories of 45 different voices, people of all ages who worked with redress and reparations in NCRR over the decade, through the 80s primarily and the 90s, to accomplish what we call as our redress victory. And as a way to go into the book a little bit more, the title, NCRR, who are we? Okay, we formed in 1980, specifically, the sole purpose was to fight for reparations for our parents, our grandparents, all our relatives, our community, because a grave injustice had been done, and we were ready to take on this challenge. We're an all-volunteer organization, no paid staff, no lobbyists, but just like regular people. We wrote letters, we had meetings, we made phone calls, we did telegrams, things that the young people may not know too much about. We had typewriters and whiteout and carbon paper, and it was a struggle that I think we, older Sansei, can really appreciate, that it took a lot of effort. But what was at the heart of it was a lot of heart, meaning that we knew that we had to do this, and that kept us going. I would like to also say that about NCRR, one of the things, besides contributing to the passage of the redress legislation, which was 1988, we continued the fight for reparations through the entire 1990s decade. And you'll say, what? We thought it was over. There were thousands of people who were turned down by the U.S. government for their redress. And these denial cases, we call them, were like at a great loss. Some lawsuits were filed with our encouragement and support, but ultimately we traveled back and forth to Washington, D.C. with citizen lobbying delegations, with people who had been denied, and worked all the way through the 1990s to secure more reparations, more justice for these folks also. After the tragedy of September 11th, things changed for all of us. NCR organized a 9/11 committee and worked very, very closely with the American Muslim community, South Asians, for the discrimination that they faced. I do have to say the second part, the grassroots struggle. Grassroots are really regular folks. We really just had our, we pounded the pavement. We called people to have church meetings, that kind of thing that our different speakers will talk to you more about today. But we always boast that we were just a bunch of teachers and gardeners and truck drivers and regular folks who decided to get together and for an important cause. But one of the most important things we did, we encouraged in 1980, 81, 82, 83, people to talk about what happened to them. Your parents, they didn't talk about camp, and the history books had almost nothing, so we grew up in a vacuum. And through the redress movement, we wrote our own history, and you're going to see evidence of that history today. Are there any in the room former incarcerees, people who were in camp? I think there are. Could you please stand up? I'd like you to stand up, please. Do me a favor. Do me a favor. It's just real quick. Because this book is dedicated to you. All right, this book is dedicated to the Issei and Issei who endured the racism and injustices of wartime incarceration and inspired us to fight for redress and reparations. And so you are the whole reason that we did this book, because of what you went through. And people got involved in many different ways, not just people who were out there talking, but artists. I don't know if you were able to hear the CD that was playing during lunch, but it is called Poston Sonata. It was written by one of our San Diego NCRR redress members, Glenn Horiyuchi. Unfortunately, Glenn passed away in the year 2000, but during his life he was an artist, a composer, a musician. And during the redress time, he wrote several pieces, of which Poston Sonata is dedicated to San Diego for Poston, right? So that music holds a special place in our hearts. Artists also got involved. People contributed in whatever way they could. In the booklet, we have lots of photos, a section with some artwork that the various artists in our community could contribute to our Day of Remembrance programs. It's not like all dense text. We've tried to put in as many photographs as possible. And about Glenn, the last thing I'll just share is that he actually, when he worked in San Diego in the early 80s on redress and reparations, lived here on the temple grounds. He lived in the minister's residence and was here for many years, and so it's like a very small world. In fact, Glenn's father-in-law, Mio Ikeda, is here today to show support. His daughter wrote a piece for the article, for the book, and so we thank Edna, we thank Glenn, and we thank you, Mr. Ikeda. Our speakers, I'm trying to move around. Okay, our speakers today are not just me, thank goodness, but we have from Los Angeles, they drove all the way down this morning, is Janice Yen, who is her main supporter, her husband John. She is a founding member of NCRR, is primarily, and on the back, oh no, I did a printed program and left it in the office. Maybe someone could go get that for me. Well, redress and health, but most of all, her voice. She is a narrator of the short video clip you're going to see in the middle of the program, which you could tell where, when it comes, because you would have had a printed program in front of you. But she's a woman of many talents and was fortunate to get a job with Mervyn Dymally, Congressman Mervyn Dymally, who represented Compton and Gardena. Gardena, lots of JAs too, right? Besides being a justice-minded person, she really did a lot of work with the congressman, to which she will speak. Also, we have Kathy Masaoka. Kathy is a co-founder, a founding member of NCRR. 40 years I worked with these people, it's like an educator, but she's always had issues of youth and workers, and of course redress. And I'd say that one of the main things I really appreciated, she's our main liaison with other communities. She works so closely with the American Muslim community, the Korean American community, and does outreach to them, and that's a really, really important part of our work. And, the yellow printed program, thank you. And the fourth person, I'm supposed to stop talking now. The fourth person is Jan Tokumaro, who was a San Diego redress, NCRR redress committee.
Pierces the cozy unity of the Terminal Island community. 48 hours to pack 48 years of life, fathers first. To take care of her husband's affairs was just too overwhelming, so she just sat down and cried. Cry, Terminal Island woman, cry. Your time will come. Curfews on distance and time, carpetbaggers ripping off your last dime. No one gave you a chance, stealing your life for a song and a dance. Cry, Terminal Island woman, cry. Your time will come. In the dead of night, silent buses steal innocent families and unsuspecting children towards barren and desolate destinations, with shades discreetly drawn, shrouding passenger windows so as not to offend the sensibilities of sleeping white citizens. Endless clouds of dust, a whirling dervish of escaped dreams, slipping through floors cracked under the burden of broken hearts, and seeping through weeping barracks, secret storehouses of stolen lives. And guards, everywhere guards, to protect us from the hostile white citizenry. But wait, guns pointed at us. Wait, no, Jimmy, my brother, they killed my brother. Cry, Terminal Island woman, your lament rings from Manzanar, Poston, Gila, Heart Mountain, Topaz, Minidoka, Tule Lake, Jerome, Rower, Amachi. Cry, my people, then cry no more. Our time has come. Today, a commission sits on high, expecting the emission of a sigh representing the submission of a shy, laid-back community, which, to their surprise, stands together in unity, once again on the rise, once again on the rise. Hayakawa, that has been banana, sings in American, "Oh, Susanna, safely hidden in Canada, what's up, doc?" prescribing high-dosage semantics to cure the spewing of truth. Dance, Chiquita Hayakawa, dance. Your time has come. One by one, with empathy, support, and pride, we told our story in spite of those who tried to cut us out, cut us off, cut us short, once again imposing limits of distance and time. Now, instead of 48 hours to pack away 48 years, they gave us 5 minutes to pack 4 years of indignities and 40 years of private hells and expect us to put up with old lady dyed hair foul-mouth races. Our people spoke louder still. Presidential apologies won't pay your bill. One by one, with empathy, support, and pride, filling the hearing room, spilling out into the halls, willing each other the strength to go on, welling up with anger and swelling with pride as Issei and Nisei stood up and testified, testified, testified. Breaking language barriers, taking painful memories out of a dusty past, ridden with horse stalls and tar paper shacks, breaking a 40-year silence guarded by barbed wire and gaman. And with each testimony, my heart stood up and shouted, "Gambare, don't give up the struggle." One by one, with empathy, support, and pride, Issei, Nisei, Sansei testified, testified, testified. As Japanese Americans, we stood tall for justice now and reparations for all. Gambare. We stood up. And so today it's hard to imagine that redress was once very controversial and that there were endless arguments within families about it. So NCRR decided to take the question to the community, and we developed a survey, gave it to the Rafshipo who ran it, tallied the results, and 95% of the 4,000 respondents supported redress. 89% favored direct monetary payments of $25,000. Around that time, we met Congressman Mervyn Dineley, who's kind of an unsung hero of the redress movement. He was a legislative mentor and a partner of NCRR, and he represented Gardena, which had the largest JA population outside of Hawaii, and he chaired the Congressional Black Caucus, which was very strategic when some key votes came up later in the next few years. He strongly supported redress. And I remember him coming to my mom and dad's house for brunch and sitting down with the NCRR steering committee, rolling up his shirt sleeves, and together we drew up legislation calling for immediate payments of $25,000 for every camp survivor. However, in 1982, legislation to establish a presidential commission on wartime relocation and internment of civilians to study the circumstances surrounding EO 9066 beat out the two bills calling for immediate redress. And we were concerned because our Issei were already well into their 80s and 90s. And there was even initial discussion about boycotting the hearings until we found out that their plan was to hold 2 hearings in Washington, D.C. with a bunch of academicians and legislative muckety-mucks. So where were the voices of the people? We challenged the commission to get outside of Washington, D.C., to hold truly meaningful hearings, to go to the people and have a hearing in every city that had a major Japanese American population. As a result of the NCRR advocacy, the commission held 20 days of hearings in 8 cities. Over 750 people testified. Los Angeles had 3 days of hearings plus 2 evenings. Over 161 people testified. And as you saw, on the second day, we had the San Diego contingent, and on the third day in the morning, we had the Terminal Islanders. Getting the Issei and the Nisei to testify was a challenge. Most Nisei had never even talked to their kids about camp experience. There were language issues for the Issei, memory issues for everybody, and a reluctance to speak publicly about something so deeply personal. How many people here have ever testified at a hearing or a presidential hearing? I mean, it was daunting. So we worked really hard to support people who wanted to testify. We helped getting buses to transport people from San Diego, Santa Barbara, Oxnard, and other outlying cities. We had interpreters and headphones to help people who did not speak English well. We got the commission to hold 2 evening hearings so people that worked during the day could have an opportunity to participate. And press conferences were held every evening to keep our community informed and to make sure that the hearings got continuous mainstream coverage on TV, radio, and the newspapers. I believe that LA set the tone and was a model for subsequent hearings, and these testimonies put a human face on the issue of redress. And the hearings were electric. Can you imagine, against the hushed background, a Nisei woman sharing haiku written in camp? That doesn't count against my time. Her haiku was, enduring, and yet enduring, the color of my skin. In 1983, the Commission published Personal Justice Denied. Their findings concluded there was no military necessity to imprison us, and that the decision to incarcerate was based on race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. $20,000 was recommended, a presidential apology, and funds for future education. So these hearings were one of the most powerful experiences of my life. The Japanese American people stood up. How many communities have had an opportunity to share together such powerful, meaningful, and unifying experiences? Today, we see history repeating itself. The current administration is trying to resurrect these same World War II camps and prison sites to be used as detention centers for migrants seeking asylum. So again, we see all our communities working together with Latinos, Muslims, and social justice activists and groups like Suru for Solidarity to continue our fight for justice. Gambare.
And can you hear me? Every time I hear, or every time I see the clips of the testimony, it gets me all choked up. But I want to start by just giving a very humble thank you to Buddhist Temple San Diego for just really being one of the very first places. Excuse me, just one second. Look what she's trying.
I know, sorry.
My name is Jan Tokumaru, and I was living in San Diego from 1980 until the mid-90s. So during the whole course of the primary course of this whole campaign. So I feel a special closeness to San Diego for that reason, even though I have since moved back to the LA area. So, which brings me back to the humble thanks to San Diego, the Buddhist Temple of San Diego, for really being one of the first places to really welcome us as an organization for NCRR San Diego to get our start. But with that, let me ask if anyone in the room, who in the room was here at some of maybe the community meetings or redress updates that we had in San Diego in the 80s? I didn't think so. Everyone's too young. But I ask because it's always amazing how many years go by, how long it takes for things to really happen. So this movement really was significant. It was a significant one for the community nationwide. But without the support of the grassroots, of the community folks, whether you came to a meeting, whether you testified, or whether you brought food to a meeting, or had a conversation with your family or other, perhaps elders in your organization, it was part of what really built that movement. Of course, our community became stronger than ever, but we didn't do it alone even then. Even with all of us, we couldn't have passed it without solidarity. People like Mervyn Dimely, other legislators, and not just people in the government, but communities who really came out and showed their solidarity, whether it was at the hearings or through the letter writing and other kinds of community fundraising and support. So that list could go on and on of those who really helped us achieve what we were able to do. So for San Diego, NCRR started as a national coalition for redress reparations, and so we started up chapters in various cities. San Diego, I'm really proud to say, was part of NCRR. We also got the support of the San Diego JACL, where we worked together as a joint committee in a lot of instances in putting on some community educational events and other kinds of activities like meetings at people's private homes where people could have a chance to talk more intimately with family and friends that they knew well. And then we also had public meetings. The public meetings were basically the Japanese American community, but beyond those, we also had things like press conferences, and even went on TV for interviews to talk about the issue. And I have to say that it was quite a rude awakening to be on TV and then immediately following that all the hate calls that came into the station, or having a press conference and all the hate calls coming in to the church where we held the press conference or something like that. But I have to remember during that time, that was when the KKK was also active in San Diego area. It doesn't, whether we cared about what they did or not, it really had an effect on how people were perceiving any issue that comes up. We had an internal controversy about, whether, what form of reparations or redress was appropriate, or whether there should be any, uncovering of that history. So it was a very transformative period and a struggle for many people. And so with all of that going on, I think it took even more courage for those who did come forward. What emerged in those, maybe not so much in the public meetings, but what emerged in a lot, I would have to say every single house meeting that I was part of, and I think I was probably at every one of the house meetings we had around San Diego, were common things like, I didn't even think about that until just now that we're talking about it. Think memories coming back to people. A lot of soul searching, a lot of tears, but at the same time a lot of comfort because people were among, their own friends. But so many people said, I have not told my children what I'm telling you right now in this room. And that just goes to what a safe space people made for each other. Let's see. So just in closing, I just want to mention that it took a lot of strength from within the community, and it also required a lot of friends outside our community to make everything happen. And I think that's what has helped our next generation, provide our next generation things to build on. And for that, I really appreciate. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I really appreciate what folks have given. So, just once again, it is on that legacy, I think, that we have the strength to build for the next generations, a more just society with solidarity going all around. And I think it also reminds me that I still have, my responsibilities are not over. I think the more I discover, the more I recognize and appreciate, the more onus on myself to really do more. So thank you again to the Buddhist Temple and to all of you.
I want to give acknowledgement to Ellen Kondo, who was with Visual Communications at the time, and also the commission hearing videotaping is actually a treasure, because it is the only video that is around and existing from that time of a hearing. The Los Angeles hearings were videotaped by Visual Communications and NCRR, and we preserved them over the years since 1981. Now they're on DVD, and we have a sample of different testimonies in the back. But all the other cities either lost their videos or, something happened to them. So they've been trying to track it down, but we're the only ones that have a complete set of the testimonies, which I want to say, you only saw a smidgen of it. They are really so powerful. And I think the impact that it had on all of us and anybody that was in the room, and if you've seen it now, is that it made us want to fight harder. Like Mia said and other people said, we never heard the testimonies or the stories from our own parents, right? So when we heard other Nisei speaking at the hearings, we were so overwhelmed. It was like we couldn't stop listening. And I think even though we didn't always know if we would win, we knew that we had to keep on fighting. So NCRR had 5 very important principles of unity. And I'm not going to go through all of them because I just want to talk about the 5th one, which to me is kind of a really special one, which was that, what did redress mean? Redress means supporting those who are suffering from unjust actions taken by the U.S. government. So not just Japanese Americans who were in camp, but we felt it was our responsibility to also support others. And during the redress campaign, we took that to heart. And we built solidarity with other communities by mutually supporting what was going on. And so when the Hopi Navajo Nation came to us and they said, we're being, our land is being destroyed by uranium mining and we need support. We responded, and we had a film showing at the JACCC, and to my surprise, that theater was filled with Japanese Americans who understood the connection, that their land was being destroyed, they were being moved, and that nobody really cared about what was going on with them. And so, they spoke at our Day of Remembrance, but at that program we raised some money to support them. Another issue that we supported was apartheid. No, we didn't support the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And even though it isn't an action by the U.S. government, but a little farther away, we felt, again, there was a movement going on. We're in Los Angeles. Many people in the LA community were working on the anti-apartheid movement. And we did feel, let's talk about this. So NCRR, as you heard, was focused on one issue, winning redress. And we had an intergenerational organization, Nisei, Sansei, Issei supported us. So we had to talk things out. It wasn't like everybody agreed on everything. So we talked about apartheid. We said, well, how does it relate to redress? How does it relate to us? And we understood that people were being moved off of their land again into like the outskirts, the Bantus land, and their culture was being taken from them. This is their country. So we also felt the similarity between what would happen to our people being moved out of their communities into camps, and just these ongoing historical connections to people. So we did support the anti-apartheid movement after much discussion in NCRR and and talking and thinking about it carefully. I was actually very happy to be a part of supporting an effort to end the fingerprinting of Koreans in Japan. Now again, that's farther away, and maybe it doesn't seem to be connected to our community, but we saw that they were being treated in a certain way by the Japanese government as less than. They could not become citizens, They had to be fingerprinted when they became 16. Many of them didn't even know they were Koreans until they became fingerprinted. So I went to Japan as part of a minority delegation from this country with Native Americans, African Americans, and others. I learned more about the Koreans in Japan and other minorities there, and saw that actually we have a lot more in common as minorities, and I could feel that there was more connection to what we experienced here and what they were experiencing in Japan. So that was kind of a learning experience. I was able to share in 1989 what we had done during redress, and they were at a point where they were very ashamed of being Korean. So many of them hid being Korean, and so they were trying to begin and regain some pride in who they were. And that was kind of another thing that we shared, because many of us have not been proud of being Japanese American, right, growing up. Finally, I'm very most proud of NCRR and our community, because after 9/11, I think we learned the lesson of solidarity and the importance of supporting others, because, I'll take a little bit of water here. Because our community, as many of the Muslims said, was the first to respond after 9/11 in calling the mosque and offering support. So they often thank our community for doing that. But NCR organized a candlelight vigil in Little Tokyo, and again, to my surprise, there were like hundreds that came out on a very short notice. And our community, several organizations got together to sponsor the vigil. And Japanese Americans, I think, understood that we were seeing a similar thing happening to Muslims that had happened to us. They're being scapegoated, they're being attacked simply for being Muslims. And so I think, it was an eye-opener. We formed a 9/11 committee. And even though we didn't know Muslims, I knew nothing about Islam. We live in the same city, but we're very segregated. The first thing that they told us was, just get to know us. Let's just build a friendship. And so we did that. We had iftars during Ramadan, during the season of fasting. We had break the fast programs. We started a program called Bridging Communities, so our young people could get to know each other. And that was the biggest lesson of all, was just that we have to break down barriers between our communities and just get to know people. You get to know people, you understand that you have a lot more, even if you don't have a lot in common, you're people, you have some things in common, you learn from each other, and that's really what it is all about. We don't want to live in our own little world, but we do have to reach out. And I think that, to me, is the lasting legacy of redress, is that we understand the importance of solidarity. We constantly see, again, camps being brought up, people try to justify the camps again. And I keep thinking, didn't we learn the lesson? Didn't redress end all of that? But it didn't. It didn't end all of that. People are still saying, let's bring back the camps. People still want to incarcerate people in camps. They want to put children in camps, immigration. And so we supported a group called Vigilant Love after 2015. And as NCR as an organization has been aging, we've been trying to pass on these lessons. The book is an excellent way of passing on those lessons. We have some stories that are written by younger people, not so young now, but they're younger than we are. Tracy Kato Kiriyama, another artist, and Tony Osumi, people that, were not part of the redress movement, but understand the lessons and are passing those on. And some other younger people that also are involved. So, Vigilant Love is an organization that, it was when the attacks in Paris and San Bernardino happened, some of us just said immediately, we need to get together. And some of these were young people. And they kind of knew that something might happen again. So we got together, and Vigilant Love has continued the work of solidarity. We are part of Vigilant Love, and trying to stop the Muslim ban, which passed, the travel ban, and all of the continuing attacks on Muslims and other people. Another organization that formed that NCR has been very supportive of, and sort of a sister organization, is a group called Nikkei Progressives. And that is a group that is seeing the connections of our community and what is going on with immigrants. And I know San Diego is closer to the border, so I wonder if you have a different perception than we may have being in LA. But we do feel that, when they were trying to open Fort Sill. Fort Sill was an internment camp for East State and Buddhist ministers. They were going to use that to house 1,400 unaccompanied minors, children, immigrant children. And we said, you can't do that. And so there was a demonstration at Fort Sill. People went there to protest the use of that facility. And, you know, we are part of a movement that we do not support the incarceration of families, that families belong together, and that, you know, we have to remember our own immigrant history as well, and that our country is a country mostly of immigrants and of other people, and people should be treated humanely. And so we want to have that discussion, and Nikkei Progressives had a huge concert. Again, I think I was very encouraged by the support. The theater at the JACCC was almost filled to capacity. People sponsored and donated generously to give backpacks to people that were being released from detention and with nothing. And now, of course, they're not being really allowed across the border. So we will be bringing some things to Mexico to help the families that are there. So I am proud of the legacy of NCRR and of the grassroots work that we did, of the lessons that we have learned and that are still carrying on. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, Kathy, I may go ahead and cry. It's still an emotional issue, and I think that the more you learn, the more you read, the more you experience, it becomes part of who I am, and I think that's why after 40 years we continue, you know, and still, like these wonderful presenters today. You know, when you work with people like this, how could you not continue? It's pretty amazing. We have some time for a few questions or comments or sharing. Did anyone have a question about any part of the program? Did you all notice the attack during the CWRIC? I mean, every time I see that, my heart just stops and I get outraged. You're seeing finally you got the little printed program. That was Lillian Baker, and she was our arch nemesis. She would show up at every program and try to, tear it down. And she had an organization that was seeking historical truth, that kind of thing. But she attacked Jim Kawamanami, who was a 442 veteran. He didn't let go of that paper. Okay. I was so proud of the security, the person. It was a woman, and she just elbowed Lillian, and I'm always going, yay! But sorry, don't want to be violent. Question?
I was going to ask Jan if she could share some of the individuals that she worked with that share with us.
Why don't you come back up? In fact, and Kathy and Mia, do you want to just, in case there's a question? Yeah, two more minutes.
Yes, in the thick of it all, I forgot to mention, meant to mention, there were so many people who gave of themselves to share testimonies, either in person in front of the commission hearings in Los Angeles or written, like Ted Kashima. People remember him. Ted was a very strong supporter. He submitted a written testimony, we saw Harry Kawamoto. Both he and Rebecca were very strong supporters of helping get the word out, helping share with other people in the community. Hideo Ochi was very helpful in, being kind enough to, and generous enough to, have a small gathering with close friends at his home. And then there were others, Mas Hironaka, Mas Asakawa, Frank Honda. I don't know if people see him around anymore. He was someone who was an orphan in Marino before the war, so he was at Manzanar, but living in San Diego at the time. And who else? There were, let's see, well, Elsie and Harry Hashimoto were on the listing, on the video.
I was president of JCL there, but it was just like talking to we were very slow, and I complained to them. I said, we're a small outfit, but if all the JCL units in the whole state would get together, I think this is one of the reasons why NCRR was formed, because of the kind of difference in philosophy.
I think you're right.
There was a big philosophical difference. And I don't know, I was always an activist.
Yeah.
I didn't care what they said about me.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
leadership. Thank you for doing that. It really, all of it together, everyone's, invitation or organization, meeting, it all adds up, so thank
Yeah.
you very much. Other questions or comments?
I just wanted to add something. There really, like you said, there was a lot of differences of opinion between NCRG, ACL, and NCJAR. But one of the things that, people like Norm Mineta and Bob Matsui really stress is that you guys can fight as much as you want in these church meetings and everything, but when you're out in public, we got to put a united front. And I think that that's what we did, and that was, really, yeah, it worked. And just one more thing about people standing up. Do you remember there was a meeting in Gardena? This was after we won redress, and Bob Bratt from the Office of Redress Administration was coming to different meetings and talking to people about, if they're eligible or how to become eligible and how to fill out the forms. And those people like Lillian Baker, like the one that attacked Jim Kawaminami, well, there were some, guys that, used to come in and try to bully people. And so this guy was making a scene at this meeting in Gardena, and this short Nisei guy went up to him and BOW! Bob Bratt said, I couldn't believe it, he just went up to that guy and clocked him. And I just felt like, we, after the hearings and we won redress, we're not going to take it anymore.
And Bob Bratt, who was the director of the Office of Redress Administration, worked really well with the communities, JCL, NCR, we gave him a lot of credit for making the process and getting the checks out as quickly as possible. He was really efficient. Well, he contributed an article to the book because I think he feels very close to NCR also.
I was going to make a comment and ask a question. One comment is that the impact of the camps, okay, and have we healed. So, a few years ago, we were having a conversation with some of the fourth generation, and then someone asked them, talking about trauma, and they said, oh yeah, we feel trauma. And I remember at the time kind of thinking, what? You feel trauma from the camps? So I have a question for any of the younger people here too. And does that make sense to you? The trauma from the camps, does it make sense to you?
Well, I'm a Sansei. Both my parents were in Poston, and they have both done well. My dad felt guilty about the reparations money. So he gave it away back to the churches and the Salvation Army. My mother took the money and redid her kitchen. but as far as trauma, my parents always told us you never know who your friends are. You always have to be strong. And so they raised us, and my brothers and I have some trust issues where we kind of watch out for ourselves also. And my dad always said, remember the color of your face. I don't care if you think you have money, I don't care if you think you live in this neighborhood or drive the right car, you are always going to be an Asian American.
What is your name?
Neo Ref.
Thank you, Neil, because that's, a powerful statement. While you're thinking of your question, because we have a few more minutes, I want to make two short announcements. At the San Diego Repertory Theater, the Lyceum space, they're presenting a story about Gordon Hirabayashi, one of the three Quorum Nobis case, one of the men who stood up and challenged the incarceration. And it did go to the Supreme Court. Hold These Truths is the name of the play, and it runs through December 8th. And it's in downtown San Diego. If you've not gone, please check this out because it's a very powerful piece, highly informative. And with the JAHSSD, the Historical Society, has put on a photo display of historic photos and was there last evening to speak to the audience. I'll be there on December 1st, the matinee at 1 o'clock to speak, probably show some of the commission hearings because if you see the photos, it's a powerful reminder of what happened. But when you hear the voices and see their faces and hear their pain, it really, really texturizes. It really is compelling and you really get a sense of what camps were like. The other announcement before I forget is more information about Poston, where most San Diegans went. Kimberly Cruz is in the back by the ticket table, and she has a flyer. Her father is involved with Poston books about the blocks, who lived in the blocks, and historic photos, really, really great historic photos that were donated for these books. And so if you'd like more information about those, please see her or take a flyer, and we'll all learn a lot more.
Are there any Yonsei that want to make a comment?
Are there any Yonsei, fourth generation, who'd like to share how you received this program, what you think about it? Please.
Well, I'm a Yonsei, and my great grandparents came to Hawaii. So I do know that when I visited my grandfather's, their ashes are at the Homeji. I saw that he had a brother, and the story that I've been told was he was in the military in Japan, and when they moved to Hawaii, during this whole thing, he was taken away to a very, one of the worst concentration camps where it was in New Mexico, and so they don't know how he died, but his ashes came back to Hawaii. So when I hear these things, I kind of feel guilty because in 1981, I was in high school, so for me, my life was about, dating and when I had a boyfriend, it was kind of more like a teenager, right? So it's just kind of neat to hear all these stories.
What is your name?
Lorna.
Lorna? Thank you for sharing that because one of the things we've all learned is the stories. The stories are so powerful for every single family who was affected. It's just, it's enough to keep you going, meaning to realize the depth of what happened. One executive order just was completely unnecessary, as we find out later. And it just, when I use the word devastated, it has generational impact. It's not anything to be taken lightly. Even the ones issued today, people need to be aware of what is going on and the impact it will have, especially on the children for many generations. Yes, sure.
Well,
Please stand. Vote or come up. Get a choice.
I just have a comment that as long as there's racism, that it will be an issue. Every now and then, it's just out of the blue, like I'll get that comment. Why don't you go back to where you came from, right? And I don't know, I think a lot of us may have experienced that. We're born here, but out of the blue, some stranger will say something like that, and then go, yes, racism still exists. So, yeah, so that's my comment.
Like how many people here are still asked, where were you born?
Yeah.
See? Yeah.
How were you from?
Yeah, or where are you from?
What are you really?
Was there another question to that, please?
Yeah, I'm Yonsei, I'm Darren. And I just wanted to share that I grew up in San Diego, but I got kind of those same questions. I would get, kids around me saying, well, what are you? And, they kind of constantly ask me, and, I'd be like, finally say, I'm American. You want to see my passport? Yeah. So, it's, I think, so even as a fourth generation, there's still this kind of, this sense of, like, having to feel like you have to prove that you're Americans, prove that you belong, and that you have the same rights as everyone else to be here and to just be treated like everyone else. And so I think that's one thing. The other thing I was just going to share is actually, it kind of came up in the discussion. There was this reading called Garage Door Opener, and that was maybe about half a year ago, so I can't remember. But they were talking about how Beyonce feel very kind of like this kind of like background anxiety about success, I guess you'd say, and like you talked about like kind of the previous generation about how this pressure to be like an engineer, a doctor, you know, kind of all these like really like established professions, because there were things that like people couldn't take away from you. And I feel like even in my generation, you know, talking with my friends, no one really talks about it, but I think they all have this kind of sense of insecurity and uneasiness, and this kind of like drive that they have to really succeed and do well. And you know, my sense is that part of it is that you feel like you try to do better and to have something so established that no one can take it away from you.
Your name is Darren? Thank you for sharing that.
Like, my kids get it from both sides, though. Who are you, what are you, and why are you here? They get it from Asians, especially FOBs. You know, it's like, they'd rather talk to me than my kid. You know. Or talk to my kid through me rather than, so they get it from both sides.
Yes, Efton.
My wife Shirley often tells me around December she gets anxiety because of December 7th. And we were also saying recently this movie that came out Midway, they're still making World War II movies, and they'll never let them forget that Japan attacked America. That'll never die.
That's December 7th, when, yeah, I still feel tense, awkward, nervous on December 7th. And it's from when we were in school, comments that were made and that kind of thing.
The reality is they're all Chinese that day. December 7th, my dad was killed. What are you? I'm Chinese.
Trust issues, and I definitely do have issues with trust just because of the fact that my parents have been very cautious and told me try not to do anything wrong, always try and follow, you know, the ways in which the white society wants you to follow, and then also it was just really hard to find really good friends that I could really trust, and basically because of what happened to their lives and how they couldn't trust people as a result of various things. So that whole trust issue is an issue, and I'm kind of wondering if that went through you, my kids.
Well, we have more evidence about the impact of, you know, that kind of abuse that happened to our parents and grandparents, and that we still suffer, but also to Neo's point about people react to this, you know, all the time. And we have a lot of work to do. And I really like Kathy's comment about, you know, there are a lot of ways to make progress, and one, of course, is getting to know everyone, talking to them, you know, sharing, getting to know one another, and really going outside of our comfort zone to meet, you know, people in other communities and learn more about them, too. That will really go a long way. I'm really cognizant of the time, but I do want to say that, you know, the program you're sharing, I mean, I could stay for a long time, but I think people have places to go, things to do. But again, thank you to the temple, to the Historical Society.